Welcome back to another episode of the Isn't That Rich podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ashley McVicker, and today I am all alone in the great state of Illinois in the snow because my co-host, Jill Franks, is in the great state of Florida with some palm trees behind her. Jill, how's it going?
Hey, Ashley, it's going well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really excited for this episode because today we're going to be talking about kids and finances.
I am excited too, Ashley, because kids are our future. And one of the really important things we've taken on this year is teaching our students and our children in the high schools all about money. But money knowledge doesn't start there, does it?
Does not start there. It starts even younger. It starts as young as age 3, which is like crazy because when you think of a 3-year-old, you think that they don't know anything. But they're already learning spending patterns at the age of 3. Can you believe that?
It's insane. I always like to bring this up, and there was a study out there from Purdue University, and I think it was like in 2018 or something. They did this study, the psychologists at Purdue did this study, and they looked at correlations between how people feel about their lives and how much money they earn and all of this stuff. And one of the things they realized is that spending habits in young people are already formed by the age of 7, which I think is just insane. So like all of your spending habits are already formed by age 7. And I think I have 2 nephews that are 7 years old right now. And to think that they've already developed all those spending behaviors is crazy to me.
Right. And what's even crazier is people don't even start teaching, if they even do teach their kids about finances, they don't even start until they're like maybe middle school, maybe high school. And by then, I don't want to say it's too late, but it's kind of like, if you look at the research, they already have these spending patterns developed. They're ingrained in them. Right. And so it's going to take a little bit of time or a lot of hard work to change those. And we're going to kind of go through that stuff today and what that looks like and how to teach your kids about finances, but also how to change your child's financial habits if you want to do that. So, which I hope you would.
That's right.
Because we want financially literate people in this nation and in this world.
That's right. And so we talked about a little bit about how we teach the high schoolers financial literacy, but when should you actually start, Ashley, teaching your children about money?
I don't care who's listening to this or how old your kid is. I don't care if they're 25 or if they're 4 years old. Start now. Just start now.
Absolutely start now. Yes.
It's never, they're never too young.
Example. That's right. Never too young. And I love this example. I don't know where I heard this. Maybe it was in a book we read or something, Ashley, but there was if you sit your kids down, this is a good starting point to know when you should start teaching them about money is if you hold up a $1 bill and a $100 bill, and your child can differentiate between the $100 bill and the $1 bill, and they choose the $100 bill, you know that it's time. They already understand the value of money, that you should be teaching them about money from then on. So pretty young age.
Jill, when's the first time you remember learning about the value of $1 or like your first encounter with money or what it meant? What did that look like for you?
So I grew up in northern Minnesota. My grandparents owned a resort and we were really little, but every year we would go to this resort with the 6 of us because my grandparents, like, I don't know how they did it, but they took care of all 6 of us grandchildren at such a young age. And we would stay for several weeks. And in order for us to stay, my grandparents put us to work. So I remember like going out and raking the beaches, and my grandma would give me like $1 for raking the beach, right? Getting all the seaweed off the beach. Or we would walk around the cabins and pick, like it was a penny for every cigarette butt that we would pick up and throw in the trash. But I remember in order for me to like, they had this really cool lodge and it was stacked full of candy or sarsaparilla bottles. You know what I'm talking about? Like the root beer with the sarsaparilla, the glass bottle. And I always like, it was my goal to get one of those every day. It was like $1.25 for a sarsaparilla. And so I learned at a young age that in order for me to get that sarsaparilla at the candy shop, that I would have to earn my way. And so I started cleaning cabins and did whatever I could to help out my grandparents to earn that money. But what is your first time that you recognized the value of money, Ashley?
I don't know why this like sticks out to me so much, but it does, and it's so funny. But when I was in second grade, I remember like I guess I had gotten some birthday cash or something and was saving money because I'm a saver. So that's like kind of my pattern. I've always been a saver, not a spender. And I would always save my birthday money. That was like, I knew that was coming. And so I put it all in this clear polka dot wallet and I took it to second grade class with me and I put it in my unlocked locker. And I thought, like, yeah, no, so stupid. But I was
So you just
showing,
had this wad of cash
I had a
at
wad of
school.
cash. Cash is king, honey. And I had this wallet and I remember that was when I
Yeah.
recognized that money had value because I thought I was cool for having all of this cash. I knew that with this wad of cash that it had value because the other kids around me, they knew that money had value as well. And I thought I was super cool because I had that much money. I did get in trouble when I got home for taking that much cash to school because I learned then that someone could steal it. But that was probably my first experience with learning the value of money. And ever since then, I would just say, like, I have been a big saver and a hider of
Big
money now
saver.
that, like, that experience happened. But yeah, money's crazy. And it's so interesting when you're a kid what that looks like and remembering those times. And it's also interesting that kids have different experiences than I do,
Mm.
than you do. Everybody has a different experience. And so, yeah, I'm excited to jump in this episode and talk about resources and just what it looks like to teach a kid about finances because you should.
Absolutely. And I love that you said everybody has a different experience with money because it's so true. And the habits that you form when you're so young are carried out through your entire life. So whether it's good, bad, you're a spender, you're a saver. And this is another thing too, is we all, no matter how we're raised, we talk about this with like different kids in our lives, right? Like
Hmm.
you can raise like I'll bring up the twins again. My sister has a set of twins and they're 7 years old and they're a complete opposite. Like one is a spender, one is a saver. And so you can raise them the exact same way and they still will behave differently with their spending habits. It's so interesting. But how do we begin teaching good financial habits, Ashley? Like what is a few ways that what are a few ways that we can teach
So
kids at a young age?
I would say the easiest thing that you can do starting off teaching your kids about finances is just incorporate them to what you're already doing. So your
Mm,
kids are going to be with you typically till school age. And so that's the perfect time to be teaching them. So if you're going to the bank, take them to the bank. Teach them what it looks like to write a check, what a check means, how to pull money out of the bank, looking at cash. What does that look like? Sit down with them when you're writing your bills or writing checks for your bills, or if you're paying your bills online, show them what online banking looks like because that's going to be a new component of teaching them about money. Um,
yeah.
when I was a kid, we didn't have online banking. And so if my parents were going to teach me about something, it would have been more so with cash or a check, but we still need to teach those things as well. But incorporating kids into your everyday life, even when you're going to the grocery store or you're going
Yeah.
to McDonald's and you're buying them a Happy Meal, say, this was $15 because that's probably how much it costs now.
Yeah.
Just incorporating kids into your everyday life, your everyday spending, teaching them the value of money that way is the best way to get started, I think, and the easiest way because it's something you're already doing. It's just you being cognizant that you're there, you have an impact on your kid right now. And so take that opportunity to teach them.
Yeah. So spending time with them. And you don't think that kids are actually comprehending what you're doing when you're showing them these things. So like you might feel so silly like sitting down with your 4-year old when it's time to pay your bills. But like I remember my parents, like I remember when it was tax time, I remember my mom getting all these papers out. And it was time to do, pay the taxes or sit down and meet with the accountant before doing taxes. And I remember her pulling all these important documents. I don't remember exactly what she was doing with them, but I knew it was something important that had to be done. So, like, whether you think that they are comprehending what you're doing, there is an impact that you're having when you're going through the motions with them. So, I mean, say you're sitting down, it's time to make your monthly loan payment. get out your checkbook and tell them exactly what you're doing. Have them sit next to you and say, okay, we took out a loan for our house. We put, when we bought this house, we paid a big amount of money for it, but we had to have help with the rest of it. So we took out a loan on our house. And in order for us to have this home, we have to pay back the money that we borrowed. And so this check, we have to make this every month, and maybe even give them the pen and have them help you make that check, write out
Yeah.
that check. Because do you remember when you learned about checks?
Oh,
It was so
I
late
was
in
just
life.
gonna say it was so late in life, and like I would have to. I remember sitting in the bank drive-through, writing a check, because like if I wanted to cash a check, I thought that was like so cool when I learned how to do that. But I had to like really sit there and think, am I writing this on the right line? Do I have the right account number? Am I gonna go to prison? Because you all know I always think that. That's like the thing I say. But yeah, I learned late in life how to write a check, and not that my parents didn't teach me. I think maybe I don't know, just something maybe I didn't want to learn or absorb, but I'm glad my mom and dad did teach me how to write a check is what I'm saying, because some people don't.
Or I think about this all the time. I think it was middle school age when we started writing checks and when I learned about it, and you know, um, even spelling numbers out
I,
on the check line. Do you remember that, Ashley? It's like, oh, I don't know how to spell 14. It's
I don't, I still have trouble with 90. I
yeah.
have trouble with
Yeah.
40, 90, and 50. And guys, I know I work at a bank, but like that's just me being very transparent. So, but so teach your kids how to spell out things on a check.
Get used to it,
Yeah,
right? Like get used to writing a check, getting used to seeing it and not letting it be like such a foreign thing that we're not familiar with. Like
right.
having that there and seeing it at a young age is so important. And I also think about like the other side of checks too, right? So that check register book, um,
Oh
that
gosh.
could be such an important tool to teach your kid, like sitting down and showing them this is how you track your spending is through this check register. And
Hmm.
not that everybody uses that so often now, but it's a good starting place for kids to actually see a concrete number.
Yeah.
So
So we talk a lot about, incorporating kids into spending and paying bills and all those things, but I think it's really important to know about how you talk about money, how you talk about money with your spouse or your friends, and just knowing that kids are always absorbing that information. And so it is really important that you speak about money in a positive and informational light instead of maybe fighting about finances, because I would imagine there's kids out there that have probably aren't the best with their finances because maybe they saw their parents fight about it.
I think that's so true, Ashley, because think about the stresses. Children are so impactful at a young age. Like, so if you're showing up really stressed and you're, always worried about how you're going to make a payment, or um, you're not speaking negatively about not having money. So maybe they have a mindset of,
We can't
you
afford
know,
that. We can't afford that. We can't afford that.
yeah, yeah, instead of making like really good plans and goals and setting healthy limits with money, they might
Right.
have a negative relationship with money about just by the way you're speaking about money. So just being really cognizant about how you are coming off to your children at a young age is important.
Yeah, and I think too you don't have to be uber rich or well off to speak positively about finances. And I know we always say this in the bank, like we use advancing language, so we say we can do something instead of we can't do something. And so when you're talking about finances, don't say we can't afford that. Maybe say, you know, we're going to do this because XYZ. Speak about your
Yeah.
finances in your plans and your financial plans in a positive light, and how you're going to fix things and what you're going to do, and instead of just ranting on your kids about why you can't afford that, because if they hear that you can't afford that, they don't think they can afford that, and they don't think that they'll ever be able to afford that into adulthood. And that's just psychological truth, I think. And I know
Right.
I'm very fortunate I can speak from my own experience. Like my parents, I always say this, like taught me really positive things about finances, and that has had a very positive effect in my life.
Yeah. And I think about my family as well. My dad was always, you know, talking about his finances and investing in the stock market and
Mhm.
that made me have an interest in it because of how he spoke about it. And I think about how we are in today's society. We always talk about this in like money as a taboo topic and not speaking about money in social settings. But I think about how damaging that is too to someone so young because that makes them stop when they wanna ask questions, right? So if they have a question about money and they feel that that's something they can't talk about, maybe they just go through their entire life without asking that question. That could be super damaging as well. So making sure that you're speaking openly and having honest conversations about money, setting goals, and like you said, using advancing language when it comes to talking about money is really important.
Right. And, I always compare finances to health, but I will hope that you teach your kid about like basic hygiene, and you want to raise them into a clean, nice looking, well presented adult and a healthy adult. And so we care a lot about those things, and that's great. But like finances is a big part of somebody's life. It is a huge part of the pie in our life. It is a big section of that. And so taking time to raise your kid with financial knowledge in a positive manner is very important. Um, Jill, I like what you said here about involving your kids in large purchase decisions. So you said here, maybe we're thinking about getting a credit card. Maybe you and your spouse are thinking about getting a credit card. Well, there's so many different credit cards. There's a lot to learn about credit cards. So involving your kid in that decision and talking to them about what this looks like to get this credit card or this credit card and
Yeah.
and watching their wheels turn and just say, well, maybe I think you should get, the Discover, or you should get the Farmer's Credit Card or Capital One or
Yeah.
whatever, teaching them about benefits and, pros and cons of different financial decisions.
Well, I think how great would it be for them to have already walked through that with you when it comes time for them to do it themselves. So as you're involving them in those conversations, like, so we'll talk about the credit card thing, or I know there was a study out there about, having them come with you to purchase the family car. So there are a million different cars out there and which one looks most attractive? Yes, we want to get that Cadillac Escalade for our family. That would be an incredible family car, right? But maybe it's in your budget for you to get a Chrysler minivan, and that is most economical for where you are with your family. It gets better gas mileage. These are all things for children to start thinking about, and the reasons why you are making a specific decision and not going living outside of your means to reach for that Escalade is so important too. So involving them in those large purchasing decisions gives them a leg up when it comes time to make those on their own. Well, I
Last,
want to talk about allowance
oh,
because I feel like giving an allowance to a child is really important and can teach them a lot about how to spend money too.
yeah, I never had an allowance. Did you?
Didn't you?
No, I didn't.
So my parents were
I
very
was
on
living
and
off that
off
birthday
about
cash, Jill.
no, my parents were on and off about allowance. I remember one time we sat down and we were really, like, if you do this and you do that, then you will earn a specific amount and you can use it for whatever. But yeah, it was never really consistent with me. But I think allowance can be a great tool for a child to learn about money. And I think Dave Ramsey really stresses this in his teaching, whether you like him or not. I think the what is it, the envelope system for kids
Hmm.
is such an impactful, and this is probably the best time for them to learn about that because it'll teach them to be good community members, right? Like set aside money for different things. Like eventually you're going to have to pay taxes. Why not, have them set aside money for that? Or how about they allocate money for the things they want to do. Like a certain amount of money can go to their savings if they choose to go to college someday, or a certain amount can be set to spend on fun things.
Right. I will say I got vacation money allowance. I remember that my parents would give us all $100, and that's all you got to spend on vacation, which I mean,
So
that's a
like
lot
you're
as a
on
kid.
vacation,
You're
that's what you
on
use it for.
vacation, so you're in
Okay.
Florida, you're in Mexico, and they're like, here's $100. You can buy whatever you want. And like, of course, if you
Ooh.
went to Disney World, it was gone within the first day. And this did not include like my parents obviously paid for my fast pass and all those things, but if I wanted a Disney hat or something, I got to use
Or
my
like,
$100. And so that taught me to like, I knew I only had this amount of money for vacation to spend. I usually probably just pocketed it, honestly, because
'cause you're
saver.
that saver.
I'm not saver.
I love it. But yeah, I feel like, don't you think an allowance is a good tool for parents to teach their kids?
Yeah, absolutely.
The last one we're going to talk about is that you should take your kid to the bank with you.
Take your
And why?
kid to the bank. Kids come to the bank all the time. It's not
And
weird. So I don't think you should feel, I don't know, maybe parents do feel like, I don't want to bring my kid in there. Like, I just want to get in and get out, but take them to the bank.
mhm,
Show them what it looks like to sit down with a nice customer service rep and
yeah.
ask them about money.
And I think there are such great things to opening an account for a child at a young age. And of
Mhm.
course, it's, you have to be an owner on the account or a co-signer on the account with them as an adult. But how great would it be to start showing them that you can use a bank as a resource
Right.
as you grow? And developing a relationship with a banker is so important at a young age. And if they feel confident walking into a bank, like I remember opening my first bank account with my mom, and I did get checks when I was like 15 or 16. Um, we come back to the whole psychology of money, right? So, like, if you have a good relationship with a personal banker when you're young, when you have a question when you're older, you're not going to be afraid to ask them questions. You're going to want to go to them and use them as a resource. So, starting young, opening a bank account is so important. And I think there are lots of special bank accounts, and we can talk about something we have coming up, Ashley, hopefully soon. Um,
Yes. Do we want to talk about it?
I think it's okay. It's for sure something we're going to be doing. It's not already out there right now, but it's something we're going to be doing in the future. So we're rolling out this program. If you want to touch on it, I know you've been working with Amy a little bit about that at the bank.
Yes. So Amy, our new accounts representative, she is the bomb.com. She actually started this process of getting kids kind of enrolled into finances and figuring out what that looks like for our bank. And so we actually have a kids account coming to Farmers State Bank, and it's going to be called Paw Club, PAW. And the reason it's called Paw Club is because all of the schools around us, their mascots are like a wildcat or a tiger. They all have a
The
paw.
tigers,
Yeah. So
bulldogs.
where all of our
Yeah.
banks are. And it's really just it's a kids account. It's a kid savings account. They can come in, do their deposits. When they get a certain amount of deposits, they'll get a bigger reward. And it's just teaching them positive reinforcement about finances, teaching them about savings. So we're really excited about that. That's going to
Yeah.
be out in the next few months, hopefully. So
Yeah. I can't wait to roll that out. But I always kind of equate this as like going to the dentist. When you go to the dentist, you get your teeth cleaned, you'd walk away with like, you get to go look at the prize box and like
mhm.
pick out a prize. Well, it's something similar to that, to like, like you said, Ashley, using that positive reinforcement to like get your kid to look forward to going to the bank, which is not always a fun thing.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think getting them comfortable, because I'm going to back
Mhm.
up a bit. Like, I don't even remember opening a bank account when I was 16. Like, I think my mom just like, got it open for me. And then I had this piece of plastic, and I would go to the gas station, and I literally did not know how much money was on
Mhm.
the card. And I talked about this in the last episode, but I've overdrawn my bank account before because I didn't know anything about bank accounts, and I didn't know how to call the bank and ask if I like had
Yeah.
money. I don't know. So teach your
Yeah.
kids to be confident going into a bank, and just how to speak to a banker, because it's really easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And that has something to say about maybe using cash as a tool when they're really young too, right? So if
Hmm.
you're something tangible versus a card, it might be a good idea to introduce cash to them and first and use that envelope system we talked about earlier. And then
Hmm.
as they advance, using that plastic debit card and keeping that check register to really monitor and budget for how they spend their money. So good.
Absolutely.
So now we have a few tools. We talked about going to the bank, opening an account. We talked about offering an allowance and how you speak about money and how you should do life with them and make big financial decisions and pay your bills with your kids. What about a child that's older than 7? He is, or he or she is, like, becoming more independent. How do you teach them about finances at a later age?
So, if a kid is older and they have bad financial habits, I think let's just give the parents hope out there that kids can change.
Yeah.
Just like somebody in their 30s can decide to make a whole health 180 and lose 100 pounds. It just takes hard work, and it takes discipline, and it takes learning. And we're here to shed some light on some resources that can help with that.
Yeah, and I think it's very important, as kids grow up, that you don't stop talking about these important financial behaviors with
Yeah,
them,
no.
and finding different ways that interest different children. So, like, I think about, when you're raising a girl versus raising a boy, you learn to speak to them differently depending on how they react to things, right? So every child reacts differently and are motivated differently. So maybe, like, I heard my dad talk about stocks as a young child, and that was interesting to me. So I started, you know, moving that way with some of my finances, like becoming interested in different things
Mhm.
is important too. So you can speak to your different children differently about finance. So maybe budgeting and saving would have worked really well for you, Ashley, because you're a saver. And
Mhm.
so that was important to you. And maybe another child, like, if they had a family meeting and they sat down and they decided that they were going to purchase a stock. Like, they were really interested in Disney World. Like you said, going to Disney World was important to you. So maybe Disney World was like they wanted to buy ownership in Disney World. And so, like, purchasing a Disney World stock or whatever it is, Disney stock, right? So, like, maybe that would motivate another kid
Yeah,
to start saving for their
I
future.
agree, Jill. It's like looking at what they're motivated by. So, some of your kids, like, they may love going on vacation. So
Mm,
teach them about, okay, the older you get, mom and dad aren't going to pay for vacation anymore. So if you want to go on vacation, this is what you're going to have to do to get your finances in order to be able to go do that. Some kids may want the $1,000 pair of tennis shoes on the shelf, and they like stuff, and that's okay, but teach them, stuff is expensive, especially wants, and you're going to have to pay for your needs before you pay for your wants. And
mhm.
so just finding what motivates those kids and showing them how to utilize their finances in a way that can get them the things in life that they want.
Yeah. I think as kids age too, they're faced with a lot of different financial decisions. Like, are you going to go to college?
Hmm.
Are you going to open a credit card? What is a credit card? How does that work? And being able to have open conversation about that is so important too, because I think about, like, when I was a kid and I went to college and I went to I was like a job fair at the school. They have those all the time, and you go around and you do little interviews. Well, of course, there was a credit card company there talking to me about opening a credit card and how much it would be so much easier to pay for books on a credit card. And now I know we talked about Afterpay in the last episode a little bit, but, like, when you go to check out and you're buying something online,
Now you can take out a
Afterpay,
loan. It's not even,
it's
not that a credit
yeah,
card's not a
it's
loan, but there's so many more financial options, is what you're saying, that can honestly trick your child if they are not ready to,
mhm,
if they're not ready for those things, and they don't know about them yet, and they don't know how to use them. I'm 25, and we literally played Monopoly the other night. And I know that Monopoly, I tell people, play Monopoly with your kids, because if you want to learn about money and going broke or getting rich or learning about real estate, that is the best game to play. I won the other night. Let the record show. I
congrats.
am like the big real estate tycoon in the family now, but I think that's a great way to teach your older children about finances, because me and my brother were sitting there playing with my mom and dad, and like it was just so funny because it's quick real life though when it comes to, finances and on a topic of like real estate, which is something that I'm interested in. And so it's just finding those like fun avenues, I think, to teach older kids about what they're interested in financially.
Absolutely. And providing with the right resources, like opening that bank account with them. Don't do it for them, but making those decisions with them and
Hmm.
guiding them on
Hmm.
that path is so important.
Yeah.
I like to think about, I know you have a story, you told me, and I was like, gosh, I'm proud of you for doing that on your own. I remember you telling me the story about when you told your mom, like, you wanted to go buy this car and you thought it was like you just picked one out, and she's like, okay, go get a loan, go do it.
I
Tell me
know.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I came home one weekend from school and I wanted a new car. Like this car had caught my eye, the one I have now, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I was driving on the interstate a lot and I was like, I really want a bigger car," essentially. So I went home that weekend and like I'm not a quick decision maker at all, but my mom is like really good with finances, is a really good decision maker. And I went home and I was talking about it and she was like, well, let's go do it. Like you have no reason not to. And forced me into, I don't want to say she forced me into getting a loan because it was obviously my decision, but she was like, we're going to go down there and we're going to talk shop with the car guys and you're going to sit in a meeting with these men and they're going to talk about finances and we're going to bargain with them and you're going to see if this is something that you can afford. And I'm like, I'm broke, blah, blah, blah. I was not broke, but you're like a college kid. And I hadn't ever taken out a loan before. And it just was really scary. And I mean, we spent 5 hours down at the car dealership, but I got a loan and I was able to pay for it and I built credit and I ended up paying my car off early and now I own something. I have an asset. And so through just even getting a car, like something that's pretty, I don't want to say simple, but like everybody does it at some point in their life, it's taught me so much about ownership, about loans, about money, about principal because paying the principal on your car. So many aspects that I did know actually before I worked at the bank. Um, and that was like a big turning point too in my financial life because I was like, wow, this is amazing to know that like I took out money. I was scared of it, but I was able to afford it. I paid it off and now I own something. And so it kind of for
Yeah.
me, that was like a motivator. And I think that's what I needed to do because since I was such a saver, I probably, if my mom hadn't have pushed me to go do that, I probably wouldn't have, and I would still be driving the same car that I drove when I was 16.
And
Um,
it teaches you so much responsibility too in that, right? Like how to pay something on time
yeah.
every month. And like that's something you have to do for the rest of your life. And that is such a big first step is actually taking that plunge and being responsible for something, and it's your
Yeah.
own now. And you have something to show for it. And how proud were you in that moment?
I
Like,
was so proud. Do you remember when I paid my
yeah,
car off and I ran into the lobby and I was
yeah.
like, everyone, I'm debt free.
I
And they
love
were
it.
like,
I love it.
congrats. Like, cool. But it was so cool for me. And it taught me such a big lesson um,
Yes.
just about finances. And so I'm glad I did
And
that.
there are so many other tools out there. One tool that Farmer State Bank has, and we're really proud of it, is it's a fintech. It's an app. It's an app. It's a
Yeah.
financial literacy app, and it's called Zogo Finance. And you can sign up for it. You can use our code. So then you're on ours, and we can give you gift cards and all that good stuff. But essentially, we pay you gift cards to learn about finances. And it is
Yeah.
a great tool to give to your kids, I would say from 10 up, really.
Hmm.
If they have access to a phone or an iPad, they can sign up for Zogo Finance, and there you go through these little modules and you learn about your finances, and it teaches you real life things. Like I really enjoy the app because
Hmm.
the different stages that you go through in life, it kind of caters to those different things. So
Yeah.
Zogo Finance.
We go to the high schools a lot every semester, honestly, and that is one of the resources we bring to them is Zogo Finance. It's just a gamified app, like Jill said. It's so fun. It's so easy. They're always updating it with different topics. I know like cryptocurrency, when that came out, that was a super hot topic and all the high schoolers loved it. And they have these competitions against each other. And it's really just takes you through these bite-sized modules, teaches you about
Yeah.
finances. And it's like so cool the feedback we get because like they can
Yeah.
say things on the app about like, oh my gosh, I've learned so much. And so it's a resource that we've been able to put in the kids' hands that it doesn't just leave at high school. They can keep it on their phone forever, and learn about finances and the new things that come out, because we all know that new things will come out financially, and it just keeps going faster and faster every year. But yeah,
and if you don't have those we talked about later in life, if you didn't have the greatest experience or relationship with money, or weren't taught those things, like you and I are so lucky, we talk about this all the time, but everybody walks through their financial life differently and are exposed to different things, this is a great way to change those behaviors and to learn is through this Zogo Finance, is to learn more about finances if you weren't taught that at a younger age.
I also want to say too, and this is just in every aspect of life thing, they say that, whoever they are, they say that the 6 people that you spend the most time with, like that's essentially like who you will turn into. And so if you're wanting to be somebody that is better with your finances, hang around people that are good with their finances. Hang around successful people that know what they're doing when it comes to money, and ask them questions, because I can promise you people that know how to utilize money and have great financial health and success, they also are the same type of people that are willing to teach you because they want other people to be successful too. So just remember, like, look at who you're hanging around with. And if you're seeing your friends that don't really have the best financial habits or are really big spenders, I know I have a friend and I love her to death, but I mean, she spends, I have a couple of friends that are big spenders, so it's not just one, but like, and I'm not going to not be friends with them, but like, they're big spenders. And so I just think like, recognize who you're hanging out with. And if you are wanting to go a different direction with your finances, like that's a major, that's going to change the way you do your finances. So, Jill, some parents may be listening to this and thinking like, I've just done a terrible job with my kids' finances because my own finances are bad. What kind of advice do you have for them about that? If they feel like they can't even teach their kids, like where do they start?
Yeah, I just think you're never too old to learn about your finances. So spending is a behavior, and you can always change your behavior, forming new habits. And there's so much information out there for you to begin learning about your finances. So let's learn together. And I encourage you to tune in to this podcast as we kind of answer those questions throughout the upcoming episodes.
Yeah, we're a community bank, and so we care about our community. We care about the adults that live in our community as well as the kids. I know we talk about, the high school kids a lot. But like if you're an adult and you're struggling to kind of figure out your finances, come into the bank and sit down and just talk about it. We will figure it out. We will get you on the right track. That is our job. We want you to be financially literate, financially healthy. And so when you are healthy, we're healthy. When we're healthy, you're healthy. When you're healthy, your kids are healthy. And yeah, I'm excited. Like, I just love teaching about financial literacy and making, like, bringing the awareness to people through this podcast is really important to me.
Yeah. So we hope you tune into the up and coming episodes. If you haven't subscribed to our podcast, let this be your call to action to go ahead and do so.
So we hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Isn't That Rich podcast. You can follow us on all types of platforms. So Apple, Spotify, YouTube, if you want to watch the video versions of this. And you can also find us on social media or on our website at myfsb.com. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.